On this vote, the yeas are 171, the nays are 248. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 4, printed in Part A of House Report 112-296 by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Peters, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 4, printed in Part A of House Report number 112-296, offered by Mr. Peters of Michigan.
Recorded vote is requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
The bill the House has been debating this afternoon requires federal agencies to review existing regulations, changes some of the ways that they make regulations, and empowers small businesses to challenge some federal regulations. This is an amendment proposed by Representative Gary Peters of Michigan, which would exempt from the bill all rules from the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, that they determined would result in net job creation. Another 2-minute vote and 2 more amendments to follow this, and then on to final passage after that.
This vote, the yeas are 178, the nays are 2.
Ms. Kaptur. Ms. Kaptur votes aye.
On this vote, the ayes are 179, the nays are 243. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on amendment number 5, printed in Part A of House Report 112-296 by the gentleman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the nays prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in Part A of House Report number 112-296, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
Recorded vote's been requested. Those in support of request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
The underlying bill, one of two bills the House will deal with this week, dealing with changing the way federal regulations are handled. This revamps the way federal agencies write and develop federal regulations, requiring them to do a cost-benefit analysis. They're working their way through a series of amendment votes. This is the third of 5. Sheila Jackson Lee with an amendment that would require the Government Accountability Office to report within 2 years of enactment to determine the cost of carrying out the bill. One more 2-minute vote will follow this.
Vote. The yeas are 172, the nays are 250. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 6, printed in Part A of the House Report 112.296 by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Johnson, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the nays prevail by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 6, printed in Part A of House Report number 112-296, offered by Mr. Johnson of Georgia.
Recorded vote's been requested. Those in support of request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
Last amendment vote in this series, Hank Johnson of Georgia has an amendment which would exempt from the bill any rulemaking to carry out the Food and Drug Administration Food Safety Modernization Act. This is a 2-minute vote. The bill itself requires federal agencies to review existing regulations and expands the ability of small businesses to challenge federal regulations. It's the first of two bills that the House will deal with this week, curbing federal regulations. Earlier today, by a vote of 235 to 190, they passed a bill that would terminate the Election Assistance Commission and also end taxpayer funding of the presidential election campaigns. So they'll wrap up the amendment votes here when we expect ahead a Democratic motion to recommit and final passage.
On this vote, the yeas are 170 and the nays are 250. The amendment is not adopted. The question is on the amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rules, the committee rises.
Okay. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union has had under consideration H.R. 527 and pursuant to House Resolution 477, I report the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
Chair of the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union reports the committee has under consideration the bill H.R. 527 and pursuant to House Resolution 477 reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on the amendment to the amended report from the Committee of the Whole? Not. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Question is on engrossment, third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to amend Chapter 6 of Title V United States Code, commonly known as the Regulatory Flexibility Act, to ensure complete analysis of potential impacts on small entities of rules and for other purposes.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentlewoman opposed to the bill?
I am opposed to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlewoman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Speaker, the chamber is not in order.
Moves to recommit the bill H.R. 527.
The House is not in order. Members will kindly take their seats. They will clear the well, take their conversations off the floor. Those in the aisles will kindly take their seats, and conversations are taken off the floor. Members will kindly cease their conversations on the floor. Not quite. Hold it. Not yet. Not yet. Clerk will read.
Ms. Loretta Sanchez of California moves to recommit the bill H.R. 527 to the Committee on the Judiciary with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendments. At the end of the bill, the following. Section, protecting incentives for small businesses to hire veterans. This Act and the amendments made by this Act shall not apply to rulemakings or revisions of rules if such rulemakings or revisions are for purposes of providing incentives to small businesses, as such term is defined in Chapter 6 of Title V United States Code, for hiring veterans, as such term is defined in Section 101(2) of Title 38.
Gentlelady deserves to be heard from both sides of the aisle. The House will come to order and conversations on the floor will cease. Please take conversations off the floor. The gentlelady deserves to be heard. Conversations in the back of the chamber, please be taken off the floor. Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to offer a final amendment to H.R. 527 that, if passed, will allow the bill to be brought back promptly to take a vote for final passage. Mr. Speaker, this final amendment is non-controversial and aims to do one simple thing: to protect the incentives that assists small businesses to hire veterans. This amendment comes at a very critical time for our small businesses and for our veterans. Several weeks ago, this House did something that most of America doesn't believe anymore we do. We came together, all of us, Republicans and Democrats, and we voted on a bill and we passed a bill together, unanimously, the Vow to Hire Heroes Act of 2011. The bill pushes key provisions like providing small businesses incentives so that they will hire veterans who have been unable to find employment. As a new law, the tax credits that we offer in that vow bill would require additional regulations to be implemented in order for small businesses to begin to hire our veterans. And our veterans need jobs now, not tomorrow, now. Yet this bill, the one we're considering right now, sets up many new hurdles and delays for new regulations, like those needed for the implementation of the Vow to Hire Heroes Act. In a little more than 2 weeks, we went from a 422 to 0 vote with that Vow Act to now potentially hindering our small businesses from hiring veterans. However, we have a chance to fix that. We have a chance to fix that right now. And we have a chance to fix it and to bring back this vote promptly, to bring this bill and vote it today. So I ask my colleagues, especially those on the other side, what are your priorities? I know what my priorities are. My priorities are to small businesses, and my priorities are to our veterans who have fought for this nation. Mr. Speaker, if my colleagues on the other side truly believe that small businesses are what create the jobs in America, then we can fix this bill by voting for my amendment. If you believe that our veterans should not have to fight for a job after having fought for our country, then we can fix this bill by voting for my amendment. If my colleagues believe that the over 250,000 unemployed veterans under the age of 35 deserve a job, then we can fix this bill by voting for my amendment. I know what this side of the aisle believes. We know what the choice is. It's about small businesses, creating jobs, and hiring these brave men and women. We want our small businesses to have those incentives so that they can hire our veterans now, not next year or the following year. Now, we need jobs now. The bill itself raises a lot of regulations and hurdles to new implementation, but now we can fix the bill and we can help our veterans and our small businesses. It's our duty here in Congress to look after those who have looked after the people of this country. So my final amendment does this by ensuring that we allow those regulations that are needed to protect these incentives for the small businesses who want to hire veterans. I would have no doubt, I would never doubt, that my colleagues on any side of the aisle would intentionally want to hinder the hiring of veterans, especially after I saw that unanimous vote right before Thanksgiving. Remember that. We finally did something together. So I ask all of you, let's do the right thing. Will you stand with our veterans and small businesses and protect those incentives that we voted for 2 weeks ago? If you believe it's the right thing to do, then you'll vote for this. Oh.
Time's expired.
Then you'll vote for this amendment. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose, the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the motion to recommit.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The President in this very chamber said we should have no more regulation than is necessary for the health, safety, and security of the American people. Mr. Speaker, the President in this very chamber conceded overregulation has stifled innovation and chilled growth and jobs. Professor Kaz Sunstein, hardly a conservative acolyte, said we must take aggressive steps to eliminate unjustified regulatory burdens, especially in today's economic environment. Mr. Speaker, 43% of the payroll in this country comes from small business. 2/3 of all the jobs created in the last 2 decades come from small business. Small business, Mr. Speaker, is the backbone of this economy and the single best way for all Americans, veterans included, but all Americans, to experience the majesty of the American dream. So one would think that our colleagues would storm the aisle to join us in providing relief to small business, including veterans. One might think our colleagues would rush to help us form a phalanx against an overreaching regulatory apparatus. So, Mr. Speaker, let's stop using veterans as political footballs and start helping all Americans, including veterans. The Regulatory Flexibility Improvement Act of 2011 is a logical reform. It simply asks agencies to do the kind of pre-regulatory analysis they should have been doing anyway. Frankly, the bill seeks to enact much of what the President claims he wants with respect to regulatory reform. Since small business creates most of our jobs and since regulatory compliance costs are higher for them than for larger competitors, Congress passed the RFA of 1980 requiring agencies to analyze regulations, Mr. Speaker, in advance. Hardly a revolutionary idea, Mr. Speaker. Know the consequences of your actions before you act, especially when it comes to having a chilling effect on job creation. But the experience over the last 15 years has shown the law needs to be reformed, Mr. Speaker, and updated because agencies aren't getting the message. This bill requires agencies to do what they should be doing anyway, which is to calculate the impact of their regulations on job creators beforehand, to make sure all agencies follow the rules, not some of the time, not when they feel like it, but all of the time. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, our fellow citizens want to work. They want to meet the needs of their families. They want to meet their societal obligations. And we should be doing everything in our power to make sure regulatory agencies measure twice and cut once. And our job requires, and this bill ensures, that they get the message. For this reason, Mr. Chairman, I urge my colleagues to oppose the motion to recommit.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. No. Opinion of the Chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members record their vote by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 and 10 of the Rule 20, this is a 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit, and it will be followed by a 5-minute vote on passage of H.R. 527 if ordered, and suspension of the rules with regard to House Resolution 364. This is a 15-minute vote.
The House is voting on the Democratic motion to recommit on a bill that would revamp the way federal agencies review existing regulations, the way they make rules, and it would also expand the ability of small businesses to challenge federal rules. This 15-minute vote, the motion to recommit, offered by Representative Loretta Sanchez of California. Her motion would prohibit additional rulemaking procedures that would slow down veterans' job creation and hiring. A 5-minute vote, final passage vote, will follow this. And then on a vote on a bill, a resolution the House debated yesterday, and a resolution that would name a meeting room in the Capitol Visitor Center after Gabe Zimmerman, the congressional aide to Gabby Giffords, who was killed in the Tucson shooting earlier this year. That vote is still ahead on the House floor. Earlier today, the House did approve another measure, 235 to 190. They voted on a bill that would terminate the Election Assistance Commission. It would also end taxpayer funding of federal election campaigns. In the Senate today, they've continued work on the defense authorization bill. It's possible they will finish that up tonight. Also possible that we may see some action on the bill that would cut payroll taxes, the Democratic proposal and the Republican proposal, but no word on that yet. They have to get that done before the end of the year. Speaker John Boehner said today that Republicans are ready to work with President Obama and the Democrats to extend that payroll tax cut and unemployment benefits offset with spending cuts elsewhere. We're going to show you Speaker Boehner's briefing from earlier today as this vote continues.
Down. Get out of the way, Chief. Relax.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, Republicans told the President back in September that we're ready to work with him to find common ground on jobs, including an extension of the payroll tax cut and extending unemployment insurance. And that offer still stands. The key question is, how do we pay for it? When the President used a joint session of Congress in September to announce his plan, he promised the American people that every penny would be paid for, including the extension of the payroll tax break. And Democrats in Congress have also conceded that it should be paid for. It's important that the payroll tax cut be paid for because that money is used to fund the Social Security Trust Fund, which is already facing imminent bankruptcy. Unlike other taxes, the payroll tax is used to fund Social Security. As such, the revenues that the payroll tax generates are already dedicated to a specific purpose. Revenue collected via the payroll tax finances benefits for current and future retirees. And any drop in revenue resulting from a temporary reduction in the payroll tax that is not paid for will harm the Social Security Trust Fund and accelerate the program's looming bankruptcy. So Republicans agree that we need to focus on jobs, but we need to do it in a way that doesn't harm Social Security or add more to the country's already large deficit. Americans know we can't get our economy moving and create jobs without dealing with Washington's out-of-control spending. So Republicans are ready to work with the President and the Democrats to extend the payroll tax cut and unemployment insurance temporarily, but they must be offset with spending cuts elsewhere. This week, Republicans are taking several more steps in order to help create jobs and boost our economy. The House will pass 3 additional jobs bills to help create a better environment for private sector job creation. This is in addition to the 20 bills that we already have sitting over in the United States Senate. Our plan to help America's job creators, we've got some of these enacted into law through both chambers, but there's 20 bills sitting over in the United States Senate. And I would urge the President to call on the Senate to allow votes on these bipartisan bills and ensure that they receive a fair vote in the Senate. So we hope the President will put his partisan politics aside and urge the Senate to move these bipartisan bills as quickly as possible. And with that, I'll be happy to answer your questions. Yes, ma'am.
In this first week back after the Super Committee's failure, what is your observation that is the biggest takeaway in your conference from that failure, and how will that impact the business that you have to achieve the rest of the year?
Well, I'm going to say one more time, and you've heard me say this multiple times, that I have great respect for all of the members who served on the Super Committee, both Democrats and Republicans, in the House and Senate. Because I worked with them, I saw how much time they put into this. And while they didn't reach what I would call the goal, there was a lot of important work that was developed that I think will be helpful to the Congress in the coming months and years. In addition to that, the problem's still there. We have a $15 trillion national debt. We're going to add another $1.3 trillion worth of debt to it this year. And this issue has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed now. Yes, we've got the sequester that kicks in in about 13 months. But no one really wants to go there. The Secretary of Defense has made it clear that if those defense cuts were to go into action, that it would gut our military. So I really believe that the President of the United States has a responsibility here as well. He's the Commander-in-Chief. He knows what those cuts will mean to the military. And so I frankly believe that the Congress still must work with the President to find a solution to our long-term debt.
Mr. Vander, Mr. Speaker, how do you plan on having that? What venue, what format would this discussion happen under? I mean, how?
You know, as I described about 5 months ago, this Rubik's Cube, we still haven't found the answer. If it was easy, somebody would have figured this out a long time ago. It's not easy. All I'm going to say is what I said yesterday. I'm one of those who just never gives up, and I'm not going to give up here either. Loudmouth. Go right ahead.
Would failure to pass a payroll tax extension and unemployment benefits harm the economy, in your opinion?
I don't, I'm not an economist. I don't know what impact it's going to have on the economy. It's just that I do believe that there's enough common ground between where the White House and Democrats are and where Republicans are for us to move this legislation and to do so quickly.
Mr. Speaker, Speaker Pelosi is backing a ban on insider stock trading by lawmakers. Where are you on this, considering there are hearings going on right now?
Well, I think having the hearings is the right thing to do. As I've made clear, I don't never been involved in the last decade or two in any day-to-day discussions about my stock trades. The Ethics Committee this week outlined for the members that the use of our private information for their own financial benefit is against the rules of the House, and outlined pretty clearly what those rules are. In addition to that, I think the SEC also has pretty clear rules. And so I think the hearings are a step in the right direction to determine whether there's a need for such a bill to act, to move. We'll let those hearings proceed.
Mr. Speaker, will you try to include any of those 20 House-passed bills in the payroll tax extension or a last-minute appropriations bill? And if so, what are your top priorities?
Well, we're going to talk to our members tomorrow about what some of our ideas are about how to deal with this subject. And I think that there clearly are some of those jobs bills and other ideas that we have that we think would help create more employment opportunities in America that may be considered in this. But no decisions at this point.
Mr. Speaker, are you supporting this effort by the Majority Leader to change the automatic spending cuts as part of a deal to extend the payroll tax cut, sort of link all of that together at the end of the year? Is that going anywhere?
Well, as I just mentioned, there are a lot of members who are concerned about the defense cuts. But understand that there are a lot of other cuts that would be involved in the sequester. And so I understand the concern. But the President is the Commander-in-Chief. The President, I think, understands pretty clearly that these cuts would do serious harm to our ability to defend our country and our allies around the world. So I believe that there's a role that he has to play in this process as well.
Mr. Speaker, talk for just a moment. You said the spending problem is still there. You know as well as I do that the Budget Control Act, the number is 1043, with the disaster relief that boosts this number up potentially to 1050. How do you get past that when to be in compliance with the Budget Control Act and at the same time reduce spending when folks in your conference are saying, look, we haven't cut enough?
Well, the 1043, $1,043 billion is the cap on discretionary spending for this fiscal year that we're in. And if that number is not met, there's an automatic sequester that goes into effect all across the rest of discretionary spending. So the 1043 is going to happen. In addition to the 1043, there's an average on the disaster of relief that's already been budgeted. And so I believe that on the discretionary side, we've done most of what can be done. I think all of us understand the real drivers of our debt happen to be on the entitlement side. And I would remind you once again, there are 10,000 baby boomers like me that are retiring every day. That's 10,000 more people on Social Security, 10,000 more people on Medicare, people living longer accessing Medicaid services, and the Congress and the White House, Washington, has waited far too long to deal with this financial crisis that's been coming at us like a train for years. So it's going to be very difficult to get out in front of this problem. But the sooner we begin to take real action to solve the drivers of our debt, the better off we all are.
Mr. Speaker, you said that the reason to go with the unemployment insurance and the payroll tax cut is because there's common ground, but you sort of declined to endorse the payroll tax cut as being good for the economy. Why is there common ground? Is it because you think these policies are good ideas, or is it simply that the President has a political interest?
No, I do believe that there's enough common ground. I don't think there's any question that the payroll tax relief, in fact, helps the economy. You're allowing more Americans, frankly, every working American, to keep more of their money in their pocket. Frankly, that's a good thing. The concern that we've had is what does it do to the Social Security Trust Fund? And that's why I believe that protecting it is critically important.
Speaker, do you believe that the unemployment insurance extension should be paid for?
I do. It's spending. And I know people have not ever looked at it as spending, but the fact is it's money racing out the door. And I think that we've identified sufficient areas of common ground when it comes to the types of cuts that could be used in order to make sure it's paid for.
Mr. Speaker, you've had discussions with some of your regions.
Was there enough progress made at the Joint Select Committee for you to sit down directly with the President and continuing to try and figure out how to come up with the rest of these cuts? Do you think that there was enough progress made at the Super Committee talks to now sit down and talk with him directly?
Well, I think we'll just have to wait and see whether that's a wise move. But I had said earlier, I'm in the category of one who never wants to give up. The Joint Committee did, in fact, move the ball down the field on a number of issues, such as fundamental reform of our tax code, both on the business side and the personal side, and what that would look like. That could help facilitate another conversation, whether it's between leaders here or others. Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, you've had discussions with some of your colleagues in leadership about the dock fix, and I was wondering if you've identified a path forward for this legislation, if so, realistically and financially, about how long of a fix or how long can you hold off the Medicare cuts to position?
Well, there's a bipartisan conversation going on with regard to Medicare and the reimbursement rate for doctors. And I'm confident that we'll be able to come to some agreement on how to do that, again, in a fiscally responsible way. Thanks, everybody.
No word on whether any legislation will come to the House this week. Probably not this week on payroll tax cut, but in the Senate, look for some sort of test vote at least by Friday. No word on whether that will happen this evening. The Senate's been continuing debate on the 2012 Defense Authorization Bill. The House is voting on the motion to recommit attached to the dealing with the bill that curbs federal regulations. It would change the way federal agencies review existing regulations and allow small businesses to challenge federal rules. This motion to recommit would prohibit additional rulemaking procedures that would slow down veterans' job creation and hiring. It's just about wrapped up. Final passage vote is next.
too late.
Ms. Pelosi. Ms. Pelosi votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 188, the nays are 233. The motion is not adopted. Questions on passage of the bill? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say nay. Opinion of the chair is the nays have it.
Mr. Speaker.
Lady from gentleman from
On that, I ask for a recorded vote.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in favor of recording of a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
Final passage vote on a bill that would revamp the way federal agencies write regulations. It would require them to do more cost-benefit analysis on federal rules and also allow small businesses to challenge federal regulations. This is a 5-minute vote. One more 5-minute vote will follow, and it'll be on a resolution that the House debated yesterday that would name in honor of Gabe Zimmerman a meeting room in the Capitol Visitor Center. Gabe Zimmerman was the aide to Gabby Giffords, who was killed in the Tucson shooting earlier this year.
On this vote, the ayes are 263, the nays are 159. The bill is passed without objection. A motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Fleischman, to suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 364, on which the ayes and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 364, resolution designating room HVC 215 of the Capitol Visitor Center as the Gabriel Zimmerman Meeting Room.
Question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to the resolution? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House approves the measure, which would require federal agencies to review existing regulations and expand the ability of small businesses to challenge federal rules. Another federal regulations bill tomorrow in the House. This is a vote on the resolution which was discussed yesterday on the House floor, the resolution honoring Gabriel Zimmerman, who is the late aide to Congresswoman Gabby Giffords and was killed in the shooting in Tucson earlier this year. This resolution would name a large meeting room in the Capitol Visitor Center after Gabe Zimmerman.
The yeas are 419. The nays are 0. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Okay. From what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I sent to the desk a privilege report from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 479, resolution providing for consideration of the bill, H.R. 10, to amend Chapter 8 of Title 5, United States Code, to provide that major rules of the executive branch shall have no force or effect unless a joint resolution of approval is enacted into law, and for other purposes.
Referred to the House calendar and ordered printed. The Chair lays before the House the following enrolled bill.
H.R. 394, an act to amend Title 28, United States Code, to clarify the jurisdiction of the federal courts and for other purposes.
The Chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, this weekend the 10-2 University of Southern Mississippi Golden Eagles are going to be traveling to Houston, Texas to win the Conference USA Championship game. As a fourth-generation Golden Eagle, I would like to place a friendly wager with my colleague from Houston, Texas, a gallon of Mary Mahoney's famous seafood gumbo that we will walk away victorious.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, I will.
I am a proud Cougar, and as you well know, Cougars are silent, fast, and deadly. We welcome Southern Miss to Houston, Texas, the 12-0 Cougars, and we plan to give you all the barbecue you can eat as we celebrate the victory of the great Cougars, University of Houston, academic and athletic champions. It's a pleasure to place this wager with you tonight. Cougars, ready to pounce on you.
Well, our Golden Eagles talons are going to be out. They're going to be ready. They're going to be sharp. We're going to rip y'all to shreds, so I accept your wager.
Peace in the valley.
Amen.
Victory for the Cougars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fiscal year 2011, the United States Postal Service brought in $65.7 billion in revenue, but spent $70.6 billion. When counting a $5.5 billion mandatory payment to fund retiree health benefits, which they would have defaulted on already were it not for the extensions on the payment, the Postal Service ran a deficit of $10.6 billion. In an attempt to cut costs, the Postal Service has announced that it's considering closing over 3,600 post offices, the large majority of which are rural. By the Postal Service's own numbers, they would only save $200 million annually if they were to close each of these post offices. This is kind of like asking a family of four that makes $65,700 a year and adds $10,600 in credit card debt